The other day, we had some pretty massive news drop from Elliotte Friedman as it appears that Chris Drury, the New York Rangers general manager, is looking to go out there and make a big splash trade happen at some point before this upcoming deadline that will happen later on in 2025. But it does seem like Chris Drury has clearly waited way too long to really kind of make this big move happen. And during this season, it definitely will make it a lot harder to see that massive trade happen, see that massive change that we definitely know this team needs to eventually, win that ultimate end goal of, getting that Stanley Cup. So in today's video, we're going to kind of break that down, take a look at that kind of post there from Elliotte Friedman, kind of what he had to say once again, but really kind of dive into, whether or not I think this team can actually get that big deal done, what it could possibly look like, which players kind of go out the door, and really kind of just break this whole situation down, because I think it's very interesting that we're in this spot right now, and Chris Drury kind of waited this offseason, didn't make that big move happen, and is obviously trying to make that move happen now, which it definitely is not going to be any easier to happen now than it was this past offseason, when things definitely are more likely to, possibly see that big, massive deal happen. So let's get right into it here, starting off with that post on X there from Elliotte Friedman, as he ended up saying the other day, in the aftermath of their 6-2 loss in Edmonton on Saturday, the Rangers have made it very clear they are interested in making moves and shaking up their roster. Among the names indicated are Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba, although other options will be considered. And the other day, I really kind of broke this down initially when this kind of quote came out there, or kind of posted next there from Elliotte Friedman. So definitely check that video out as well. But there really is kind of some problems with trying to trade away some of these top star players. And, I talked about that in another video. So if you want to check that out, definitely go look at it. But, seeing a big deal happen mid-season, it rarely happens. Not even just in the NHL, but in the NFL, NBA, MLB. You don't normally see these massive kind of groundbreaking trades happen. Now, the odd time here and there, sure it will in all sports. But in general, for the most part, you see those massive, superstar kind of trade, star level kind of guys, for the most part, traded away in the offseason when teams are a lot more, flexible with their money, and especially, in the NHL being a kind of cap situation here where there is a ceiling to as much as you can spend, right? The MLB, you can kind of go above that a bit there with the kind of luxury tax and stuff like that. But for the most part there with the NHL, you are locked in at that specific kind of cap number there, that cap ceiling. You cannot go past that at all. Otherwise, you have some big problems. So seeing a massive kind of trade happen here is definitely not as easy to kind of make things work out during the season there. So that is kind of one reason, first off, on why it's not going to be as easy to get a deal done. And the other problem I see, not only with, trying to make a trade mid-season, but also it's pretty clear how desperate we are to make a big move happen. So that cannot be good for our leverage with trading away certain players. You look to trade away a guy, Chris Kreider possibly, and other teams can kind of see how desperate you are to make that big splash trade happen. That can kind of hurt the value we could possibly end up getting in return. So that does kind of affect things a bit there, whether you think it's going to affect things a lot or a little, the kind of the leverage side of things there. We don't really know, obviously, as just, normal hockey fans here, but at the end of the day, this can't really be a good thing for this Rangers team to be in this spot right now, and other teams see how desperate we are to make that big move happen. So I can't see that being a good thing at all. So I really think this probably could affect things in a negative way, for a trade to happen there, which obviously comes down to my point here in this video, where at the end of the day, I really don't think we're going to see that massive, splash trade going to happen. Maybe I'm wrong, and I would be so happy if I was wrong, but I just don't see, one of these big kind of core players on this New York Rangers team, some of the guys with the big contracts actually getting moved away. Some of these guys have, like full no movement clauses or modified no movement clauses, which definitely makes things a lot more difficult. And if you want to hear more about kind of that side of things there and which players could possibly get traded away and their kind of contract details and stuff like that and kind of how that can affect things, check out my video from the other day when I really kind of broke this initial kind of, tweet down there from Elliotte Friedman and stuff like that. But just in general, I really don't see that big splash trade happening mid-season. Now, this upcoming offseason, I definitely think and, have to think that a big deal is going to happen. I mean, it just has to at some point, but I don't see it happening mid-season, unfortunately. Now, like I said, I really hope I'm wrong, but that's just kind of my thoughts there. And definitely comment down below as well. Do you think we're actually going to see that big, blockbuster not necessarily blockbuster, but just a big kind of star level kind of guy, core player traded away. I'm not talking about like a lower tier guy like no offense, but Jimmy VC level kind of guy. I'm talking about Chris Kreider, Panarin, Zibanejad, that kind of level of a player, that kind of core level of a player. Do you think they're actually going to get moved away? I personally don't see it happening. Even a guy like Lindgren and K'Andre Miller, I'm just not quite sure we're going to see that kind of a trade happen mid-season. Now, like I said, I hope I'm wrong, but I just am not sure if I'm going to be or not. That's kind of the question. And definitely comment down below if you think I'm going to be wrong or not, because at the end of the day, this Rangers team is just not good enough to win a Stanley Cup as it stands right now. For the most part, I think we all know why and kind of how we got so far on those, Eastern Conference Finals, playoff runs there. For the most part, there, 95% of it, 80% of that was Igor Shesterkin, the man in net there for this Rangers team. He was absolutely on fire. Both those playoff runs there, the one against Tampa there, we lost in these conference finals, and the one against Florida Panthers there. Both those runs, even the first round series against the Devils there, Igor Shesterkin was quite phenomenal for pretty much every single game. The odd game here and there, he wasn't at his peak performance, but for the most part there, he absolutely carried this team like we saw with a guy like Henrik Lundqvist for a long time as well. And I know a lot of Rangers fans are kind of scared with seeing that kind of repeat itself there, where we're just relying on our goaltender way too much, which has been some of the issues that we've seen so far this season as well. I mean, obviously, first off, we're allowing way too many shots. We've seen that before. That's not the first time ever. We're relying way too much on our goaltenders, whether it's Jonathan Quick and Igor Shesterkin, to bail us out at moments as well. We're not physical enough or kind of tough enough as a team. I think that's just a fact. If you watch this Rangers team play, there's no grit. Well, there is a bit, but not enough, and not from enough players, not just enough in general of toughness, physicality, that just grit, that toughness to play against. I mean, some teams, I'm sure a lot of players just hate to play against them because that entire team is just going to be a pain in the butt to play against, and the Rangers are just not that team, let's be honest there. I mean, sure, Matt Rempe, Sam Carrick, Trouba, those kind of guys can definitely bring that physicality at moments, but just in general, with this all-around team, there's just not enough of that physicality, toughness, and grit to really get the job done, especially once it comes to the playoffs there. We know this team has some big trouble scoring at 5-on-5 and, just scoring in general at moments, so that's been an issue for a long time and is once again not been good enough on breakouts, and just some poor defensive play overall has just been a big issue there, whether it is that toughness and physicality, in front of the net there or in the corners to win those puck battles. Whatever it is, there are some big issues on this team, and we definitely know we could use another playmaking kind of defenseman there to kind of move that puck out of the kind of defensive zone there, and that's one of the big issues. But just in general, this team is just not good enough. We knew it this offseason, and there should have been moves made, but there wasn't. The only big move that we saw was Riley Smith coming in. Obviously added in a guy like Sam Carrick, a nice fourth line center. I like that move a lot. I think for $1 million a season, a 3-year deal that he signed, I think Sam Carrick is a fine fourth line center. I like him in that spot. He adds that a bit of great toughness and just kind of physicality and that kind of stuff there. Decent defensive play, but Riley Smith being our kind of big blockbuster move was just not good enough. I mean, that's not a blockbuster move. It's not a great move. It's a fine move, and I think it was a fine value move as well. I mean, what we gave up wasn't too bad for what he's brought so far this season, but he should not have been the biggest deal that we made. The biggest free agent signing or biggest trade that we made this offseason. We knew we were somewhat close to obviously making to the Stanley Cup Finals there. Obviously losing in Game 6 there. We got a long way, but this team just was not built in the right way, and obviously Riley Smith being the only kind of big ad there, the only kind of top 4 defenseman or top 6 caliber forward that would be added in was clearly just not enough there. So Chris Drury waited until this season, obviously, to kind of see what was happening, and I'm just not quite sure why. I mean, maybe he didn't like the deals that were being offered and the value that we would have to give up for certain guys, or, the free agents, obviously, he seemed to not really want to go in on a lot of guys who did get overpaid, and I don't blame him for that as well. I don't blame him for going out there and overpaying some guys in free agency, which we definitely saw quite a few contracts that I think were a little pricey for what I would like to see in the Rangers give, but just in general, there was not enough moves made and not enough big moves as well. I mean, I'm not asking for, Sidney Crosby to come over here or Connor McDavid. I'm asking for a, true top 6 forward and a top 4 caliber defenseman, at least one of those two. And I mean, Riley Smith, he's a fine second line caliber guy. I think that's for sure. But, just in general, we needed that kind of, maybe top line kind of talent or top pairing caliber defenseman, or at least another kind of top 4 defenseman. And we just did not see that added in this offseason. And hopefully this upcoming offseason we finally see these massive trades happen, because personally, I don't think we're going to see that big deal happen this season. Now, maybe it happens this offseason coming up, but this season before the deadline happens in 2025, personally, I just don't see that massive trade happening. Anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely hit that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. If you are a Rangers fan, definitely hit that like and subscribe button to join this New York Rangers community. There are so many great New York Rangers fans that are consistently commenting in the comment section down below. So if you like talking New York Rangers hockey with other New York Rangers fans, this is the place to be. You can hear me talk about it. I'll give you my thoughts every single day on whatever situation it is involving the Rangers, but you also have hundreds of other New York Rangers fans, well, even thousands. I mean, we are up to over 2,700 subscribers on this channel, but just in general, lots of other Rangers fans commenting every single day in the comment section down below. So if you're new to this channel, definitely like and subscribe. Helps the channel out a ton. I'd really appreciate it. I post every single day, and you also get to talk with a bunch of other New York Rangers fans daily as well. So thanks so much for watching. Definitely comment down below your thoughts on this entire situation. Like I said, do you think we're actually going to see that big trade happen, that big kind of star level kind of guy, that core level kind of guy like a Chris Kreider possibly, or Jacob Trouba traded away, before this upcoming offseason? Or do you think it's going to happen this offseason, which is kind of what I'm leaning towards, although I definitely want to see that big move happen ASAP. I mean, within the next week, I would love to see a trade happen, but I'm just not quite sure we're actually going to see a deal get done. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers. Hopefully, we can see this team turn things around.